Welcome back to the Unpopular Teacher. I am Annie Lee, and this is the Great Unlearning. For those of you joining for the first time, this podcast isn't a how-to guide. It's a reflection of a journey, a grueling, often harrowing road to reestablishing a relationship with the only home I've ever truly known, and that is my body. Now, for me, this journey was particularly jagged. As a Korean American woman, I feel like my insecurities weren't just personal, they were deeply cultural. Now, in Korean culture, there's a very specific, very narrow silhouette for worthiness for women, right? Glass skin, youthful looking, size 0. And it wasn't just appearance, it was also a role a daughter had to play in the family versus the son, right? Daughters, I feel like, had so much more responsibility. They were held way more accountable, restricted, denied, deemed less worthy than sons inherently. And I grew up in a home environment where family members would blatantly tell you, right, that you'd gained weight, as if you weren't aware. They'd give you endearing nicknames like Porky or Fatty, but then there were the more subtle signs, right? The way a mother's face shifts just a fraction of a millimeter when she looks at your waistline. And as a highly sensitive person, I really didn't need the words for parents to communicate with me or for adults to communicate with me. Because I lived in a space between what was said and what was felt. And this is where the unlearning begins. It's realizing that your body was never yours. It was a project for your family to manage. And then I stepped out of my house and into the 90s. Our standards for fat were people like Jessica Simpson in a pair of high-waisted shorts. Our idols were either extremely toned or extremely skinny, like Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera. Women whose bodies were treated like public property. And we all watch the world hunt these women for the crime of having a metabolism, right? So that by the time I was in college, I was obsessive. I looked at Victoria's Secret models and used them as a blueprint for my own destruction. I developed eating disorders, trying to override the universal law of rhythm. I pushed to one extreme, starving the life force out of me, right? And then the pendulum eventually swung back with even greater momentum. I was at a war with the scale, thinking that if I could just hit a certain number, the noise in my head would finally stop. But the noise isn't in the scale. The noise is in the misalignment. And it wasn't just me. It was like every other woman out there. Being ultra thin to the point where one's health was affected was a beauty standard in the early 2000s. Tanning our skin, changing it to a different color so that we would look thinner, right? I mean, everyone's heard that when you're tan, you look skinnier, right? And girls would joke about it. And I remember there were girls that used to go tanning 5-6 times a week, which it was later proven caused skin cancer. I mean, like, women do the craziest shit to try and control their external appearance. So it's never just about the number on the scale. Things like plastic surgery, right? Augmentation of certain body parts, whether bigger or smaller. And we live in a society where going under for an aesthetic procedure is considered luxury or for the wealthy. Now, why am I sharing this with you? What does my college era eating disorder matter to you, right? Because I want to share with as many people what I have learned through my own struggles in life. And I learned a dangerous secret in college. When you cannot control the chaos inside your own head, you will often attempt to dominate the vessel that carries it. I had been suppressing my emotions for most of my life, and it started very early. I was always striving to be the good girl, to be the polite daughter, constantly trying to please my parents, seeking their validation in everything I did. And as a result of trying to please instead of just being, I was slowly stifled. So by my 20s, I was so lost, so far removed from who I am, that I couldn't even name a feeling when it hit me in the face. By my late 20s, I was so awkward in social situations because I didn't know who I was, and sometimes my mind would get scrambled about who I was supposed to play that night. Contemplate that for a second. Imagine not knowing yourself at all, being so unsure of who you are that you forgot which role you were playing on any given night. So what did I do? I refocused my energy, my efforts on the one thing I could touch, my flesh. I tortured it. I starved it. I yelled at it in the mirror, right? I thought that if I could control the narrative of the mirror, I could mask the misalignment of my soul. And even though I looked healthy from the outside, I was rotting on the inside. I had severe digestive issues, brain fog, inconsistent sleep, not to mention the depression, the anxiety, the paranoia, the constant rumination. So please listen to me when I say that your body is a vessel that stores your soul. And it is not a passive container. It is an active, highly complex, irreplicable communication system. We have to treat it with the utmost care and love that it deserves. And perhaps most importantly, we have to start listening to it. So our soul speaks to us mainly in two languages, through emotions and then through physical symptoms. When we say yes, but our soul is screaming no, or when we stay in spaces, right, that dim our light, or in spaces that disrespect us, the body manifests that friction. It shows up as neurological tremors, cardiovascular flutters, and respiratory tightness. But we are living in a culture, in a society that is so doped out by everyone else's business. We're so busy staring at other people's dramas, comparing ourselves to others, that we don't even see our own bodies waving a red flag. And we've normalized this hustle. We've normalized the anxious gut. We've normalized the tension headaches. And we brush it off like it's just a part of being an adult in 2026. But I'm here to tell you, it's not. It's not normal. It's a signal. Remember that your body is a blueprint for the life you are supposed to be living. And unfortunately, living in this hyper-capitalistic, almost but not quite there culture, we drown out that signal. And instead, we use shopping, celebrity gossip, judgment, like a drug to numb the fact that we feel behind in our own lives. Now, I want to walk through kind of a few of the places that we feel tension most in our bodies. And I think for a lot of people, the place where we hold tension most is our jaw. And this is called the vault of repressed rage. If you grind your teeth at night or you carry tension in your jaw, maybe ask yourself, what unspoken bite am I holding back? Because you are biting your tongue to stay polite. but your soul is trying to chew through the lies that you told during the day. If you feel tension in your shoulders or in your neck, right, that is the responsibility tax, all right? So if your shoulders are at your ears or you are, it means you're carrying a burden that was never yours. Something like your parents' expectations maybe, or your boss's stress, right? And the question I want you to ask yourself is, why are you wearing their weight as your armor? Now, another place that we often feel tension is our gut. And this is where our sacral chakra lies. And it is where our intuition, all right, speaks to us. So when you get like a guttural feeling, that is your intuition, right? When you get a gut feeling like, oh, don't go into that room, right? That is your intuition speaking to you through your sacral chakra. Now, symptoms in our physical body can show up as chronic bloating, IBS, constipation. And these aren't just about your food, right? Your gut is your second brain. It knows a lie before your mind can process the sentence. Your bloating is often the undigested emotions of a situation you can no longer stomach. The throat, the strangled truth, losing your voice, right? A chronic dry cough. The throat is the gateway for your soul to vocalize itself. So when the heart knows the truth, but the head is too afraid to speak it, the energy gets stuck in our throat chakra. So the question I want you to ask yourself is, what are you silencing yourself for? If the soul's intent is ignored long enough, it will eventually hijack the body. Because what's the point of the vessel existing if it's not fulfilling its purpose? So the soul attacks the body slowly at first, right? It may start with a heart palpitation, a bit of brain fog, a night or two where you just can't stay asleep. These symptoms seem so small, so insignificant. But the more you neglect the misalignment, the more they compound into diseases. And what is a disease? It is just the body being at dis-ease. How often do you actually ask yourself, how am I doing today? How did I feel about the events that unfolded today? Remember that your body speaks before your mind understands. So stop looking in the mirror to see if you're pretty enough or thin enough. Look at the blueprint to your soul to see if you're whole enough. The practice for this week is pretty simple. When you feel an emotional spike, whether it's jealousy, anger, guilt, don't push it away. And don't act on it either. Just stop and feel where it is in your body. And then trace the emotion back to, where did this all start? What old hurt are you trying to protect? And then number 3, name it. Say, I am experiencing anger because my soul feels misaligned when so-and-so disrespects me, when so-and-so diminishes me, right? Diminishes me. I want you to take the flashlight into the crevices of your body and your soul. Because remember that your body is not the enemy. It is in fact the most loyal friend that you have ever had. And it has been trying to get your attention for a very long time. And I think it's time we all started listening. Thank you for being here today, and I will see you all in the next Unlearning.